Hello and welcome to Conversations with Candace. I am your host, Candace Paul, author of best-selling novel Spiritual Warfare, and I am talking to another author. His name is David Chandler, and he has written several books. And I just want to get some insights from him about the writing process and why he decided to follow his dreams. So welcome, David. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So, you are a writer. How did you get there?
Well, it was pretty interesting. I was inspired by reading comic books. I used to collect them when I was a child, and I just figured, well, what if I were to come up with my own story and my own concepts? And I guess, as they say, the rest is history.
That's cool. So, how did it go from thinking of the idea to getting it on paper and eventually getting published? How long did the process take to get published?
Well, it took me, as far as the publishing process is concerned, it took me forever. It probably took me about a good 15 years. And as far as the initial process, as the writing is concerned, it took me, I guess, no longer than maybe 5 minutes. I would just think of a subject to write about and just write about it. But I was always into fiction, so it didn't really take too long for me. It wasn't really too much of a problem. I had a professor tell me that, always write about what you know, and that pretty much stuck with me.
That's good. And so 15 years, wow. So you must have had to deal with rejection and understanding that you have to be committed to the process. So tell us about that, just sticking to it.
Well, it was, like I said, it was a long, arduous journey. I had to really be committed to what I was doing, and there were times where I was going to give up altogether because there wasn't a publisher in the world that was going to actually want to even see my work. And then, number one, I didn't have a printer until I was late in my 20s, and then I didn't have a computer. Well, I had a computer, but it crashed on me. It was an Apple, and it crashed. So then I ended up with a word processor, and the ink was so expensive. The ink cartridges were so expensive, and so it was that. And then when I ended up moving out of my aunt's house, I had another computer which was used. I bought it from a computer store around the corner from me, and then that's when I hit gold. I ended up just finishing off from there.
So it was kind of a combination of not having exactly what you needed when you needed it, and then also getting your work out in front of the right people. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Gotcha. And that makes sense. So tell us about some of the books that you've written. You had one that was a bestseller. Can you tell us a little bit about that plot?
Well, it was about a series of ritualistic killings and two werewolf clans, and the cops thinking that it was the work of not necessarily a serial killer, but it was the work of a pack of wild animals. And this pastor, who is an expert in the occult, says that it was the work of a werewolf clan.
And the pastor's kind of the one who puts them in the right direction.
Well, yeah, at first, in the beginning of the story, but after a while, he kind of doubts that it had anything to do with this one particular werewolf clan called the Grigori, which means master hunter. And so it just goes from there. It was a pretty interesting plot because I didn't know where the storyline was going to actually go.
And do you find that happening a lot as a writer? You kind of start out with an idea and then it changes into something else?
Yeah, it takes on a life of its own, and I guess that's probably why I don't write outlines.
So you kind of just let the thoughts come, then you let it hit the paper, and you go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, that works.
Yeah.
And so what is the title of that book?
It's called Symbol of the Night. The Hunter's Mark is the subtitle.
That's awesome. And so all of your books are actually available on Amazon, right?
They are, yes.
Wonderful. And so we're going to make sure that for all the listeners, we're going to have your links in the description so then they can easily find it. So what is a book, one of the books that you've written, that you think would be a great start for a reader to kind of get to know David Chandler, the author?
Well, that was a pretty interesting question. I think that reading the first book that I wrote in 2014 is called The Hunter's Moon. Actually, it was a supernatural thriller that I wrote in 2005, and I rewrote it in 2012 into a science fiction novel or science fiction thriller, and I got it out in publication in 2014, and that's the first book that you could read to actually get to know me as an author. And then the Defender of Realms, which I wrote in the same year, I believe.
That's awesome. Okay, well, this is good stuff. I really like it. And so what would be kind of your advice for anyone who's getting started, who wants to write, who wants to become a published author? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I would say just to stick with it, to be committed to it, don't give up, and really just have patience, because it's not something that you're not going to find fame and fortune overnight, as did I. I didn't know that this was going to become of anything, but I would just stick with it.
That's very good advice, and believe me, I understand that. We all understand that. And so what are you working on now?
Well, right now I'm working on Men of Renown. It's a superhero fiction story, and it's set in the present in a small town in Southern California, and it's about a race of individuals with a genetic marker known as the aberrant gene.
That's nice. Okay. And so we should be seeing that soon as well. Well, David, I would love to speak to you a lot longer, and I think we'll have an opportunity later on. So we will have all of David's links in the description so you can find his work and get in contact with him. Also, make sure that you like and subscribe to this YouTube series so then you can hear all of the latest updates. So thank you so much for being with us, and we hope to speak to you soon.